Okay, just to remind us of a couple of things from last time. So we're discussing now the question of placement of the shulchanot and the menorot in Bayit Rishon. Whether or not there were extra shulchanot and menorot in Bayit Sheni is subject of some controversy, and I don't know that we'll get into it. But it's clear that what we're talking about is the 10 extra shulchanot and the 10 extra menorot that Shlomo made. So one of the things that we came up with last time is just to remind us of the dimensions that we're working in. So the Heichal of Shlomo is 40 amot long and 20 amot wide. Right? And the whole bait is 60 amot long and 20 amot. What we learned is that the shulchanot on the north side are going to be within one quadrant of that 40 by 20 area. So it means what we have to do is fit all of the 11 shulchanot, which are the 10 shulchanot of Shlomo and the shulchan that Moshe made. We have to fit all of them in a space that's 10 amot wide and 20 amot long. Right? Because we had these braitot that told us that the shulchanot were placed mechatzi bayit v'lifnim, right? Placed halfway through building and inwards. Inwards meaning to west. And recall, so we had a seeming contradiction because we had one that says that they were placed from a third of the building and inwards, but we reconciled them by saying they were both saying the same thing. It's just that the first one that says halfway through the building and inside, they were only using the measures of the Heichal itself, which is 40 by 20. And the one that says a third of the way in was measuring the whole length of the Beit HaMikdash, which is 60. So a third of 60 is 20, just like a half of 40 is 20. So everybody agrees that all of the shots are going to be placed from the time you walk into the Heichal. If you look to your right, then the first is now we know of nothing else there. The 20 amot are going to be empty on the right. And then the last 20 by 10 is going to be the shulchanot. And why by 10? Because we know that the shulchan of Moshe had to be in the north of Al, and the menorah was in the south, opposite it. So we're going to make a dividing line, as it were. It's not actually noted anywhere, like you don't see it, but there's going to be an invisible line to divide the north from the south. Everything that's from halfway from the width of the Heichal is going to the north. That's going to be the north. So all of the shulchanot have to fit in, and then because of these other right, we understand that the shulchanot, it's not enough for them to be in the north, but there's Masorah that says that they were also in the last 20 amot, right? So we have 20 by 10. So knowing that, we start to discuss their placement. So let's just look through this again. Tanu Rabbanan. So we learn in a Braita, Mizrach u'Ma'arav hayu munachin divrei Rebbe. So Rebbe says that the shulchanot of Moshe and of Shlomo, they were placed going from east to west. So going from east to going means that the length of each shulchan is parallel to the length of the bayit, right? That would be east to west. That's what it says. Rabbi Yozab, Rabbi Shimon says tzafon v'doron. He says no, they're going north to south. So first we examine their respective positions. My time with the Rebbe. What's the source? What's the reason for Rebbe? Gamnora. He learns the placement of the Shulchanot is going from east to west. He learns from the menorah. Ma menorah mizrach u'ma'arav. Just as the menorah is going from east to west. Av hani nami mizrach u'ma'arav. So these are also going to go. These Shulchanot will also go east to west. So of course, then we ask the question: how do you know about the menorah? How do you know that the menorah went first? Menorah gufa minara. V'dichtiv b'ner ma'aravi yaroch oto Aaron v'gnei Hashem. Yichal d'kuv Hashem. Since when the Torah gives us the pasuk about the menorah, it says michutz parochet ha'idut ba'ol moed. It's outside of the parochet that's in front of the Kodesh HaKodeshim. In way, Yaroch Oto, that Aaron has to set up, set the menorah. Erev HaBoker, Tamid, Ukata Madorot. So what do we get from that? It says Yaroch Oto. He has to set it up. So the to is the problematic word, right? Why is oto problematic in that pasuk?
Because it's singular.
One is that it's singular. The other is that it's zachar, and menorah is nekeva, right? So just 1 second. Let's see. So Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe Lemor Tzabet b'nei Yisrael v'yikhu elech Hashem en zayit zach katit amor la'alot ner tamid. Now ner is both singular and masculine. So when it says michutz parochet ha'idut bo baroch oto, so then I would assume. So what's yaroch oto? You have to be orech. You have to set up the ner. Me'er Boker, etc. That has to be what's set up. And it says in the next pasuk, Al Hamnorah Hata Yaroch Et HaNeirot Lifnei Tamid. Right, the Neirot are going to be set up in the menorah. So the Ner refers to the individual lamps, the individual lights. So, so then we're left with the problem that it sings as Lalot Ner Tamid. It's one Ner that you have to be Ma'aleh, and that has to be Yaroch Oto, that to be the one that's set up. So what about all the other ones? So Yaroch Oto, so the Gemara says, Yaroch Oto Lifnei Hashem. Yichal Dekuhu Lav Lifnei Hashem. So the diuk is that since it says that only one of the notes has to be Lifnei Hashem, before Hashem, which we discussed last time, Lifnei Hashem, either if you're outside of the Mikdash, Lifnei Hashem means in front of the Mikdash. And if you're inside of the Mikdash, then we can, especially from the greater context of the pasuk that has to be in front of the parochet and so forth, Lifnei means in front of the Kodesh HaKodeshim. So I understand from this pasuk that only one ner is actually Lifnei Hashem. is only, or it's going to be the one that we can point to. There has to be one we can point to say that it's Hashem, and the other ones are not, or at least not as much, right? So, Michal Kul Lav Hashem. So, Yisal Kadatach Tzafon V'Darom. So, if you would think that the menorah was going from north to south, that means that the face of the menorah with all the seven candlesticks or whatever you want to call them, the whole menorah is parallel to the east and west walls. It's going from north to south. So all of the nerot are equidistant to the Kodesh HaKodeshim. They're equidistant to the Parochet. So I can't point to any one of them and say that that one is Lifnei Hashem. So on that reasoning, Rebbe says, it must, how do I understand it? It must be that the menorah itself is going from east to west. And now it's parallel to the north and the south. And what is it? So what does that accomplish? How does that answer the question?
Only one there is facing the Kodesh Kodeshim.
Right, so there's only one Ner now. It's going to be the closest to the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Each successive one is going to be further and further back. So I can point to one and say, this Ner is Ifnei Hashem. And that's the way Rashi understands this sugya. And Rashi understands that it means that the westernmost Ner is the Ner that we're concerned about. So we pointed out last time that this runs counter to the way we understood this when we learned this in Masechet Tamid, where we said the Ner Ma'aravi, which is this Ner that we're going to be talking about. The Torah doesn't use the term Ner Ma'aravi. It's this idea. It's the Ner Hashem. So we pointed out that based on what we learned elsewhere, that if the menorah is going from east to west, then the Ner Ma'aravi is not the one that's furthest west. It's the one that's the first one that's no longer closest to the east, right? So you have the easternmost one, and then the second Ner from the east, that's the one that's going to be called Ner Ma'aravi. Rashi seems to contradict himself because elsewhere he also says that, but we won't get into that particular question right now. For purposes of our discussion, we'll just go with the way Rashi says it here, just because it'll be easier to follow. So as Mizrach u'Ma'arav munachim hashulchanot, the Rebbe holds that the shul from east to west, which Rashi explains means Roshan Echad Mizrach, Roshan Echad Ma'arav. The front of one side of each shulchan was eastward, and the other one was westward. Dainu Orko L'Orko Shabai. That is, the length of each shulchan went parallel to the length of the Beit HaMikdash itself. So how does Rebbe know? He says, Ma menorah mizrach u'ma'arav. Just as the menorah goes from east to west, meaning what? Ashosha kanim b'mizrach, v'shosha b'ma'arav. Rashi explains this a little bit more, and he says, he's setting us up for something, but he's saying, just as the menorah is east and west, meaning there are three eastern more lamps, and there are three western more lamps. And of course, the middle doesn't seem to be going either east or west, right? But it's just in the middle. So just like the menorah is going from east to west, so the Shulchan Aruch are also going to go from east to west. menorah gufamina. And so how do I know the menorah itself? We see the Maravi, since the Torah tells us about the Ner Maravi, Yarochoto Aaron Lifnei Hashem. So Rashi says, Dichtiv Aaron V'Gomer Lifnei Hashem. The mashma that implies Oto Hashem V'Inacher Lifnei Hashem. That's the diuk. That Yaroch Oto, that's the only one that's Lifnei Hashem is the one that's Lifnei Hashem. Alma, so we learn from that, Chadhu, there's only one actually that we'll call Lifnei Hashem. Shahavi Klape Ma'arav, and that would have to be the one westernmost, the Tzad Beta, westernmost closest to the Beta Kodesh HaKodeshim. Alma, so once I know that there's only one that's closer than all the other ones, now I know that the menorah has to go from east to west. And the outermost one that's close to the Kodesh HaKodeshim, that now becomes what we're going to call the western lamp, the Ner Ma'arav. If the menorah was going from north, then I would see that all of the wicks from each of the lamps is going to be equidistant to the west. So that's Rebbe, the way Rashi understands it. Just a second. I was trying to pick editing here. Sorry. 1 second. Okay, I'm going to stop. Okay, Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon. So that's Rebbe. So Rebbe holds the Shulchanot go from east to west because the menorah goes from east to west. I'm going to learn it from the menorah. Now, at this moment, the Gemara not yet explained why I should learn the position of the Shulchan from the position of the menorah. Well, we were concerned, the Gemara asked about Rebbe's Shita. They only asked how he knew that the menorah went from east to west. I could ask another question. Why learn the position of the Shulchan from the menorah? So the Gemara gets to that. I think we touched on it last time. The Gemara will get to that. Rabbi Yazar, Rabbi Shimon, my time. So what's the source for Rabbi Yazar, Rabbi Shimon, who says that this is going from north to south? Come on, Aron. So he learns the Shulchanot from the Aron. Ma'aron tzafon v'doron. Just like the Aron is going from north to south. Avhani nami tzafon v'doron. So the Shulchan should also go, just like the Aron, should go from north to south. And that we already learned earlier in the Sugya, right? That was the beginning of the Sugya where we demonstrate the Aron, the length of the Aron must be going from north to south because, does anyone remember what's the reasoning? How do we know?
The Betim are on the narrow side and they're hitting the Parochet.
Right, they're on the narrow side. They're hitting the Parochet. How did we know that the Badim are on the narrow side?
Because otherwise the porters would be knocking into each other.
Right. I'm back to this again tonight, but Michael Werner, you asked about this, like, how do I know that they would have knocked each other in any event? Why wouldn't I say they're holding on the outside? I do have some other sources about that. It's very interesting. And I think we'll come back to it because it's going to be relevant also later on in the sugya. But for the moment, yes, we'll just take the Gemara at its word that if the staves were on the long side, then there would only be 1.5 amot between the two porters, and then they wouldn't be able to carry it properly. Okay, so that's Rabbi Yoz, Rabbi Shimon. Now, the Gemara doesn't immediately ask Rabbi Yoz or Rabbi Shimon why I should learn the Shulchanot out from the Aron, but we'll see in a moment, right? So the Gemara questions, Rebbe Nami Ligamer Me Aron. Rebbe should also learn from the Aron. Like, why not learn from the Aron? So, Danin Chutz Michutz. So Rebbe's answer, the Gemara is going to answer for Rebbe and say, Rebbe would say, Danin Chutz Michutz. Danin Chutz Michutz. So I'm going to learn outside from outside. That is, I'm going to learn about the kelim that are outside of the Kodesh, one from the other. And I'm not going to learn the outside kelim or the kelim on the outside from the kli that's on the inside, which is the Aron. It's like a different domain. So I'm not going to learn out from the Aron. Rabbi Yozar, Rabbi Shimon, the Gamer Nora. So that seems like to be a reasonable chiluk, reasonable distinction. So we say to Rabbi Yozar, Rabbi Shimon. So of course we turn around on him. Why don't you learn like Rabbi and say that you should learn the position of Chanot from the menorah? So he's going to say to you, Menorah Gufa Tzafon V'Doram Havamatcha. So says, well, if you ask me to tell you that the menorah itself is going from north and south, and if you, that's his answer. So what we get out of this now is that now we have this machloket between Rebbe and Rabbi Yozar and Rabbi Shimon regarding both orientation of the menorah, orientation of the shulchan. And by extension, it'll be a machloket about the orientation of all of the shulchanot and all of the menorah. The assumption is that whatever the menorah and the shulchan of Moshe, however it was placed, so the shulchanot and menorot of Shlomo will also be placed in the same direction. So yeah, Rashi says Tanin chutz michutz. Rashi says menorah v'shulchan shteihem behecha. We learn the shulchan and the menorah because they're both in the hechal, so they're out in Kodesh HaKodeshim. Okay, so this Rashi goes down here. I'm not gonna edit this now because it's gonna screw up the pick with it. So I'll work on that later. Okay, so that's our answer for Rabbi Yozar. Rabbi Shimon says that he holds that the menorah itself went from north and south. So of course we ask him, as it were, as we're asking on his shita, Ela hak roch oto Aaron. And we know from Rebbe understood to begin with that was one of his for his whole shita. He's really sent from the menorah itself. We know that the moons have gone from east to west because I have this pasuk of Yaroch Oto. So there has to be one ner that's westward, that's most. So what will Rabbi Yozar, Rabbi Shimon say about that? Because according to him, now all of the Neirot are going to be equidistant from the Kodesh HaKodeshim. So he says to Mitzadeh, to Bluhu Atzdude. So he says they're going to be bent, or they bent them. They bent them. So what was bent?
I mean, from the illustration, the wicks.
Right. And this is something we discussed in the past, and Rashi explains, Mitzadeh Lahu Atzdude. V'olam tzafon v'darom manchi. So this is to answer for Rabbi Yozar B'Shim. I'm sorry. So this is the Rashi. V'aktiv oto the mashma echad b'fnei Hashem v'tulo. Right. The pasuk says oto, which implies that only one of them is b'fnei Hashem and not any more. So he says, Gemara says, Mitzadeh Dude, V'olam tzafon v'darom man. They're always going to north to south. In other words, Rabbi Yozar Rabbi Shimon says no. The menorah is always going to be pointed from north to south. And but nonetheless, there's only going to be one ner east that's westward. Behind Emtsai, it's going to be the middle one. Shepia Ptila Klape Ma'arav. That Ptila, that wick of the middle lamp is going to be pointed toward the west. The other lamps are going to have their wicks pointed to the. So that lamp, the middle lamp, is going to be the one that's pointed west. That will be the westward one. The three wicks that are on the north side of the menorah are going to be bent toward the south. The three that are on the south side are going to be pointed northward, which effectively makes them all pointing toward the middle. Titania. So until now, this is the Gemara answering for Rabbi Yozar Rabbi Shimon. Now I'm going to bring another Braita in support. Titania El Mul Pnei HaMenorah Yiru Shivata Neirot. So the pasuk also says El Mul Pnei HaMenorah Yiru Shivata Neirot. That the this is a right. This is something we saw on the Parshat Ba'alotcha. Just a second. Let's bring it up. So what does it say here? Vayidber Hashem al Moshe le'emor. When you bring up, right, or make them up the lamps, El Mul Pnei Menorah Ya'iru Shivat Rot. Across from or against or next to the face of the menorah, the 7 lamps will glow, will be lit. So this is a very awkward. It's a very, maybe not awkward is not the right word, but it's a difficult language. What does it mean? El Mul Pnei HaMenorah Ya'iru Shivat Menorah. So one way to understand it is just that when you're looking at the menorah from the front, then you can see from the front all of the lamps. It might even indicate that you should put all of the wicks pointing outward. But another way of understanding it is the way that the Gemara argues in favor of Rabbi Shimon, that the Pnei HaMenorah is going to be the middle ner. That'll be the face of the menorah. And then all of the other ones would be Ya'iru El Mul. They'll be lit up toward it. Translate. When you light the lamps, the 7 lamps shall give light in front of the lampstand. Such a great translation, but it's very hard to translate this. The Targum says, Malel ma'aron b'temale, ba'adu kutach yat b'tzinaya, b'kavel apei menartu yahon shivat b'tzinaya. It's almost a word-for-word translation of the Hebrew. And it doesn't, no pun intended, doesn't shed much light on exactly what the pasuk means. Or maybe that was pun intended. I don't know. So, nonetheless, back to the Braita here, it says, Omu p'neim nora yiru shivat meirot na'amid shayu mitzadadim p'neihem chatan tzayir. Rashi explains, p'neihem nora emtza'i omeid al gufa shel menorah. So Rashi gives us a more particularized understanding of this pasuk, that the word menorah here doesn't refer to the whole kli. That in this context, is going to refer only to the middle lamp. Emtza'i omeid al gufo menorah. Why is that? Because the middle lamp is actually resting on the body of the menorah. In other words, it's not a branch that's coming out of the menorah. It's actually sitting on the menorah itself. So it's proper that the pasuk would refer to it as the menorah. And al gufa shel menorah v'hashar al hakanim. The other lamps are on the branches. Umashma mikra otan shalakanim mitzudadot klape otam shamarav. So then, that's what's going to be implied now from the pasuk when it says El mu p'nei hamnorah ya'iru shivata neirot. That implies that the other kanim, that the neirot that are on the other kanim are going to be bent toward Mashma mikra otan shalakanim mitzudadot klape otam shamarav. It's going to be bent toward those of the west. What does it mean, those of the right? Those of the west, meaning to the one of the west. This whole thing, though, it's a little difficult, right? In the sense that the pasuk says, "Balotcha et haneirot el mu pnei hamnorah ya'iru shivat haneirot." The 7 should be mul the pnei hamnorah. So you understand, because the way it sounded like what wants to say is that it should be that the 6 are mul hamnorah, the 3 on this side and the 3 on this side. Those are the ones that are toward the menorah, which is really only the middle one. But it says shivat haneirot. So you have to understand Rashi. If I understand Rashi, what he means is, yes, the 3 and the 3 are going to be put toward the middle, and the 7th one is going to also be. It also has to be lit, and it because it itself is the Pnei HaMenorah, then it's included in that Shivat HaNeirot. I feel like I could express that better, but it's a little tricky. מלמד שהיו מצדדים פניהם כלפי נר הנציג. In any event, the Tanakama of this Braita seems to go then like Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, the way he be mitzaretz this pasuk in Vayikra that says Yaroch Oto Aharon Uvanav Bifnei Hashem. That's talking about the Ner Ma'aravi, which according to him is the middle Ner, not the one on the far side of the Ner, of the menorah. And he learns from this Mupnei Amarayu Yayu Shivata Nerot. The Braita goes on to say, Amaran Mikan Shem Tzai Mishubach. So this is a source to tell me that the middle is praiseworthy, right? Or it's the best. It's the middle one is the most Mishubach. So how does it tell me that the middle is most Mishubach?
It's the one that we're using to define the direction, at least in this case.
Right. If you say that it goes from east to west, it's the one that all the other ones are pointed to. And only it is pointed to the Kodesh HaKodeshim. So presumably it's Mishubach, right? Because the other Neirot, as it were, are honoring it. They're praising it, as it were, right? They're the ones that are all it. So we understand that the middle is Mishubach. Now, this is brought in the Gemara in Megillah to bring this in other context. So the question, in other words, you can ask, so Mishubach, what end? Like, why is that important for me to know that the middle is Mishubach? Rashi here just says, the context, this is one of the contexts where this is brought down in the Gemara elsewhere, in Gemara Megillah. It says that we learn from this, in other words, from this we learn a basic concept, that when you have two sides and a middle, that the middle is the Mishubach. And one of the halakhications of this is when you are divvying up the Kriya on Mondays and Thursdays. So you may remember, you may know, that when you lane on Mondays and Thursdays, also on Mincha and Shabbos, you do a minimal reading. So it means you have to read at least 10 psukim. That's the minimum number of psukim. Sometimes it'd be more, sometimes it's stam more, but sometimes it has to be more because there are also rules about not ending off too close to the end of a parsha ptucha or parsha stuma, and not beginning to. Right? There are things that we don't have to get into, but the idea is that of the minimal kriya on Monday and Thursday, you have 10, let's say you have 10 psukim, and that's what Rashi brings next. You can't lane less than 10 psukim on Mondays and Thursdays. Rabbi Natan here is telling us that Mishubach Arba'a Vashar Shalosh. So Rabbi Natan is telling me, because now I understand the middle is going to be Mishubach, I have to give it more honor, I have to give more regard than the other. So middle here, the middle is going to be the middle aliyah. It will be the middle set of psukim that I'm reading. So if I only have 10, then ideally I should do 3, 4, 3, so that the middle one is more meshubach. So it's interesting. We'll leave it at that. There are other perushim to this, also there in the Gemara Megillah. There are other perushim, but it's an interesting side note. Okay. Ishlama Lenanda Amar Mizrach Marav Hainu Dahavu Yative Asara Be'esrim. if you say that the Shulchanot are going from east to west, that's fine, because I can have 10 Shulchanot in 20 Amot. So remember, how long is each Shulchan?
I'm confused with the breads. I think no, I'm confused.
It's okay. So the Torah says the Shulchan is 2 Amot by 1 Amah. 2 Amot by 1. So now I have 10 Shulchanot and I have to put them somewhere, right? They have to be in this northern quadrant, right? They have to be northwest quadrant of the Heichal. I only have 10 Amot wide and 20 Amot long. So if you say that the Shulchanot are going from east to west, so that's fine. I have 20 Amot in that quadrant. Along the wall, I have 20 Amot. So if I take each Shulchan and I place them right next to each other, they will take up exactly 20 Amot. Right? So that's fine. But according to the Mandamar, according to Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, he says, I'm going to take the 10 Shulchanot and I'm going to place them not from east to west, but from north to south. So how can that work? Because they take up, the length of them is going to be 20 amot, and north to south have 10 amot before they're going to be into the south side of the Heichal. Ela mandam tzafon v'daram asara be'esrim heichi havu yatvi. 10, in other words, 10 shulchanot in 20 amot. Eser b'kat heichi havu yatvi. Right, 10 in 20. How can they sit? How can I get these 10 shulchanot in 20, because I don't have 20. With 2, not only that, let's say that I line them up from north to south. So now remember, what's the entire width of the Heichal? I know it's a lot to keep in mind. That's what I really need to make.
Yeah, I was trying to think where I have dugger. It's 20 long and
it's 20 wide.
20 wide.
It's 20 wide. The
20
Heichal
wide.
is 20 by 40. The whole Heichal is 20 wide by 40 long, right? And the Kodesh HaKodeshim is 20 by 20.
Okay, I'm getting confused between the different parts.
Right now, we're just going to talk about the Heichal. The Heichal is, right, the whole Beit HaMikdash is 20 wide. When you walk into the Heichal, it extends 40 amot westward. So it's 20 by 40. In the Kodesh HaKodeshim, it's still 20 wide and extends 20 amot forward. So that's 20 by 20. So so what did we say? Maybe a little on the spot illustrate. What's that?
I was going to say we have half that 20, so we have 10, and if they're going north to south, you can't fit 10 in a line in that 10. It'd be 20 because each one is 2.
Exactly. Let's say this is the Heichal. definitely this is not ideally proportional, but actually, hold on a second. Try to make it a little bit better. Let's make let's make this line is going to cover the first 20 as you walk in. And then this line is dividing from north to south. Okay. And this is, let's say this, hold on a second. This marks the entrance, right? So this is east. That's east, right? You'll figure out the other ones. Okay. So what's our problem? So each quadrant is 10. Each quadrant is 10, 10 wide, right? And this side here, this is going to be the ugliest. I can do text. Okay, that's 20. Yeah, that's 20. And okay. All right. This is our basic layout. So if I have 10 shulchanot, and each one of them is 2, and I'm doing them from east to west. You know what? I'm not going to draw them because it's too complicated. If I do the 10 from here, so there's exactly enough room, with leaving any space at all between the shulchanot, they will fit into 20. But if I do them this way, so of course they don't fit into 10, because I still need 20. So half of them are going to go to the south side. Michael Werner, are you okay? I know you're fading, and I apologize, but
No, there's nothing.
So this is a question. So if you say that the shulchanot are going from north to south, how can I have the 10 shulchanot sitting in the 20 amot that are the width of the hekal? Because I already said that they all have to be in the north, and this way you're going to have 5 of them in the south. The 2 kohanim hechi haili. Let's go back to my little illustration. So, of course, the question is, let's say you'll have a reason that 5 of them be in the south. But now I have a different problem. How can any Kohen ever get past them? Right? The Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippurim has to get past them in order to go into the Kodesh HaKodeshim. And the Kohanim that are going to change the bread on Moshe's, and we haven't placed Moshe's yet. Nobody's able to get past these, right? Because they're blocking off the entire north to south axis. So that's a problem. The two, Matzino Chamesh Shulchanot B'Darom. Furthermore, that we find then that there are 5 shulchanot now in the south. The two, I think I missed right. So the actually understood the first one, Esther B'Chaf, Hechi Habu Yatvi. The 10 and 20, how would they, what it means is, how can you possibly fit 10 shulchanot that are exactly, even if everything is precise, how will you actually get them to fit in a practical sense, in 20 amot? How can I get 10 shulchanot to fit these 10 shulchanot, which are each 2 amot wide, 2 amot long? How can I get them to exactly fit into 20? I'm gonna if there's any small difference between them, they won't fit. Now, I don't ask this question about the Mandamar who says they're going from east to west. I'm only asking it about the ones that are going from north to. Do you understand the question? Did I explain the question? Why am I not bothered by this question if I'm going east to west and only from north to south?
If they're going east to west, it doesn't block the passage.
No, okay, that's a separate question. So that's what I mean. The Gemara here is actually asking 4 separate questions. And these are questions that they're asking according to the Mandamar who says from north to south. So the question is, how am I going to get 10 chanot into an area that's only 3 amot wide? That's question 1. That's a question by itself. I didn't read it properly earlier. That's the question. How do I get 10 shulchanot that are 2 amot wide into a space that's 20 amot wide? In other words, there's a practicality here. It's not being, the question is that, practically speaking, this is not really going to work, or it's not going to work well. If I have absolutely no space between the shulchanot, then they're going to have to fit precisely to fit up this 20 amot area, right? But this isn't a question for the person who says they're going from east to west, or it's less of a question. So is it less of a question for the person who goes that they're going from east to west? What's the difference between arranging them east to west, not one next to each other, as opposed to north to south, one next to each other? There's a practical difference. What's the practical?
I mean, if they're arranged north to south, they effectively make a barricades.
But that's not the question, because that's another question. That's the next question. Vitzu, and furthermore, Kohanim hechi havi. Furthermore, how would the Kohanim be able to go in? The second question. Third question, the 2, Matzinu Chamesh Shulchanot B'Darom. Third question is, according to the person who says they're going from north to south, you'll end up with 5 shulchanot in the south. And we learned earlier they have to all be in the north. Vitzu, and then the last question is, Shulchan de Moshe Hecha Ma'anachre. Or where am I going? I still have an 11th one. Where is that one? Where's the Shulchan of Moshe going? So the first question, though, is this. how do I get, in other words, how do I possibly get 10 shulchanot that are 2 amot wide into a space that's 20 amot wide? It's a practical question. It's a practical question. Let's say I could completely stuff them in. So, but it's not saying you can't. It says, Hechi havu yatve. How they sit. How could they be placed that way? Because the only way, if everything was really 100% precise, theoretically they will fit in. But how you're going to actually get them to do that is going to be really, really difficult. You have to fit them in precisely. And then once I do that, then I have these other questions. Once I do that, there's absolutely no space in them. So how can any Kohen go past them? And of course, the other question is that 5 of them are going to the south. And where am I going to put Moshe's? So what I'm asking is, okay, so this first question, that these 10 shulchanot in a length of 20 amot. This is precisely 20 amot because there are walls on either side. How will they sit? That's a practical question. So now I see Schwartz shaking your head. So now why isn't this such a problem for the person who says they're going from east to west?
Because when they're going from east to west, there's only one hard wall, the wall that separates the Kodesh Kodeshim. And on the eastern side, there's no wall. There's an extra 10 amot.
Right. So there's a little wiggle room. In other words, I could say, okay, the idea that we said earlier that it's it's 20 amot and inside, maybe that wasn't a precise measure. I mean, I need to get the vast majority, like 99% or 98% or whatever it is, has to get into this northern region. But okay, there I have wiggle room. But for the Manda Amar, I'm going from north to south, I have no wiggle room. And you can imagine, anytime you've ever tried to put things, stuff things into a small area, it's a problem. So these are all very difficult issues for the person who is saying that they have to go from north to south. So let's just imagine each one of them, if I asked the person who says I'm going from east to west, so he would answer the way Michael Schwartz answered. If I'm going from east to west, he'd say, yeah, the 20 amot, it's not precise. I have wiggle room. And there, the second question, of course, is not a question. How will the Kohanim be able to go in? There's plenty of room for them to go in. I've only taken up. We haven't said this as the Gemara is going to tell us. There's 2.5 amot from the wall to the shulchan, because you do have to have an approach that will allow the Kohen going to change the bread to get on either side of the shulchan, right? So nobody's going to see, even the person who says I'm going from east to west, put the shulchanot, we don't push them up against the wall. There has to be some distance from them and the wall in order to get Kohanim on either side. Okay, but nonetheless, it's not a problem because we haven't discussed that yet. So he says, yeah, that's removed from the wall. Obviously, that's not a question for the person saying they're going from east to west because they're still all in the north. And furthermore, where are you going to put Moshe's? Now, that question is still a question for the person who says it's going from east to west. And that's what the Gemara says. Now, Ulita Mech. So according to your reasoning, Rebbe, who hold that you're going from east to west, the mandama, or it's really according to your reasoning, Gemara, that you're asking this question on the person who says Tzafon B'Darom, the mandama Mizrach Marav Nami. I can ask the last question the same way to Rebbe, who holds that they go from east to west. Shulchan de Moshe Hecha Havamameto. I can still ask that person, where is he going to put Moshe's shulchan? Because the underlying assumption here is I'm talking about the 10 shulchanot of Shlomo. But I have 11 shulchanot. So the first assumption is I'm going to put all of them in a row. But I can't put all of them in a row because the most I can put in a row is 10. And then I have to put Moshe's somewhere. So that's the question. Let's say I put all of them in a row, going from east to west. But what about Moshe's? It's not in the same row. Where are you going to put it? Ela mi sabart chad darahava, tre darini. So the Gemara answers, do you think that they were all put in a single row? In 2 rows. They were in 2 rows. Let's look at Rashi here. So Rashi says on this right? So this question, that's the 4th question to the Mandamar, says north. Now the Gemara turns around and says, yeah, but that's for the person who says they're going from east to west. Ishtakach yativ hach shulchan kulo be'es amot chitzoniyot. We find that this shulchan is going to if I keep all of the shulchanot in a line, in a single line, then it's now going to be in the lower quadrant. In other words, this is how Rashi understands the question. Now I'm going to have 1 here. So I have to put Moshe's there. So if I start with the assumption that they all have to be in a single line, so now I have a problem because I said I don't have the shulchanot in this eastern quadrant. They're all in the northwest quadrant, not in the northeast quadrant. So now, with this one question that was asked to the Mandamar of Mizrach Ma'arav, now the Gemara is going to answer all of the questions. All of the questions. It starts off by saying, do you think that they were all sitting in one row? Kulhu eser, Rosha shel zu, b'tzad zu, b'tzad Rosha shel zu. All 10, that the head of one is next to the head of the other, right, in a single row. Tredari, Rashi says, Betredari havu yatvi, that they sat in 2 rows. Chamisha minayu Rosha shel zeh, b'tzad Rosha shel zu, shel zu, b'tzad Rosha shel zu. 5 are Shel Moshe etzlan lifneihem v'lo b'shuratam. Then Moshe's is in front of those shulchanot, but not in its same line. B'shura acheret shel chamisha etzel Shel Moshe, and then there'll be another 5 that'll be next to the one on Moshe, below b'shurata, but not in Moshe's line. I'll have 3 lines. So the trei dare, the 2 lines, refers to the shulchanot of Shlomo, And effectively, I have two lines and a space in the middle, which is going to be where Moshe is. Right? And those five, the other five will also be head to head. So now, of course, this is going to make more sense. And Rashi here tells us the Mandamar Mizrach Marav Hachiyat. According to the one who says that they're going from east to west, they'll sit like this, right? So like this illustration. And we're going to place them more specifically in a moment. Right? If they're going from north to south, then they'll be sitting like this. So now how does this answer all of our questions? How does it answer all of our questions? So remember, our first question was, according to the one who says they're going from north to south. It's funny, I just realized I copied this illustration from the Gemara, and that's what it's printed in the Gemara. It's interesting, they put the north on the left side and the Durham on the right side. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so our first question was, how can I possibly, if you say they're going from north to south, how can I possibly get all 10 shulchanot to sit in this space precisely 20 amot? So now that I've given my answer that no, they're in two rows, how did I answer that question? What's the answer now to that question?
You don't have to fit 10 all the way across, you only have to fit 5 all the way across, and that equals the 10.
Oh, exactly. So now I can make a row like this, right? And I'll be putting Moshe's in the middle. This is obviously not proportional. But now I have enough room, right? So if I put 5 this way and 5 this way, so they won't have any between them, or maybe just a teeny bit of room between them, or maybe it'll even hang over a little bit to here. But I'm willing to forgive that. But I can get 5 here, and I can get 5 here, and I can get Moshe's in the middle. And of course, the Banda Amar says that I'm going from east to west. I have plenty of room, right? Because I only need 10 amot. I only need 10 amot and maybe a little, so I can do 10 here and 10 here, and then I can have Moshe's in the middle. What was our next question? To Kohanim Hechi Haili. So how will the Kohanim be able to go in? So we answered that. Now there's plenty of room for him to go in, right? I have the whole southern space is open for them to walk past. We find that there are 5 shulchanot in the south. Now there are no shulchanot in the south. And 2 shulchanot Moshe Chamanachle. Moshe's, where does his sit? So I'm going to say that Moshe's is going to sit in the middle. Now, the Gemara hasn't yet said that. It just said Trey Dari, that 2 rows. And so we're getting to the end of our time. But this is going to be the point, exactly where Moshe sat. So what I'll do for now, it's almost 9 o'clock. I'm just going to read the next part of the Gemara, and then we'll go over it more carefully. So the Gemara says, Bishlam and Lamanda Amar Tzafon v'Darom Shapir. Okay, so now I have a different problem. So the original questions I posed to the person who says they're going from north to south. And now I've answered all those questions. I've made 2 rows. I've answered all those questions. But now I have a problem with the guy who says they're going from east to west. So how far away, how how much pulled away, how far away is the shulchan, any of these shulchanot, going to be from the north wall, right? They're going east to west. They're all parallel to the northern wall. How much space am I going to leave there? So I need 2.5 amot. This should be a separate one. I need 2.5 amot distance from the wall to the shulchanot. Rashi is going to explain because I'm going to have, why do I need 2.5 amot? Because I'm going to have 2 kohanim that are going to have to come that way when they change the bread. And I know that I need 2.5 amot because I learned that from the Aron, that the staves of the Aron are 2.5 amot apart, because that's how much room I said I need for 2 people. We'll get into this more closely next time. That's the basic idea. So first, when I'm counting from the northern wall, I need 2.5 amot, and then I'm going to have a row of 5 shulchanot. That's fine. So I need 2.5 amot, va'amad didei, and its amad. In other words, the width of each shulchan is 1. So that brings us to 3.5 amot. Okay, so far so good. V'shtei amot u'mechzeh debeni beni, va'amad didei. But then 2.5 amot between those shulchanot and Moshe's shulchan, plus the width of Moshe's shulchan. So how many amot am I up to? I had 2.5, 3.5, another 2.5. That's 6. I'm up to 7. And then I have another 2.5 amot that I'm going to need again between Moshe's and the southern row. So now how many do I have? 9.5. And then I need the width of each of the shulchanot, which is 1. So now how many amot do I have?
Up to 10.
10.5. Right, so it's 2.5, 1, plus 2.5 plus 1, plus 2.5 plus 1. So I have 3 times 2.5 is 7.5. And I have 3 amot, which to account for the width of each set of each row of shulchanot, it's 10.5. So then we find that southern row of shulchanot are going to literally eat, right? They're going to take up a half of an amah space in the southern quadrant, right? And they're also put in the north. That's Gzerat HaKatuv, right? The Torah, that's the assumption. The Torah says, because it says by Moshe Shulchan that has to be in the north, the assumption is all the Shulchanot have to be in the north. Right? So now I have a problem this way. So that's going to be our problem that we'll tackle next time. And this is a good place to stop with a cliffhanger. Unlike the Jan 6 committee, I like to leave off with a cliffhanger. Okay. Have a good night. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
I'm sorry, I was.
No, it's okay. If you want, as I besides the video, I've now given you the option of downloading the audio. If you listen to podcasts, you can listen to it in your podcast app. That's what I do to review. Anyway, Laila Tov.